It is 7 o'clock. I will call to order this meeting of the Waterbury Select Board on the January 6th, 2025. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the agenda, adding to the consent agenda, your certificate of highway mileage, year ending February 10th, 2025. Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the agenda is approved as amended. Next item is the consent agenda with the additional item added by Mike.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, consent agenda is approved as amended. Next is the public session. Anyone wishing to address anything not on the warned agenda, I would ask you to please come forward. And please keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. We'd be glad to put anything else on the agenda and certainly.
So I'm going to take up a few minutes of your time and discuss my frustration and severe disappointment that our municipal staff is considering unionizing. Having come to almost every select board meeting and will continue to until they put me in the box probably, it appears to me that the town municipality has done everything it can, more than reasonable, to accommodate staff's wishes when it comes to pay and benefits and being a private sector employer. Government employees are the envy of a lot of people out there for the benefits and pay that they get compared to the people that are in my industry. I think this is the bigger problem here is that this is the result of policies that are coming out of what I'll call the dummy dome up here in Montpelier that are bearing down pressure, financial pressure on all of us. It's obvious that a month ago, many of us had to empty our savings account to pay our property taxes. And now we're right at the end of the budget season and many, school system, state government, municipalities to form budgets again to go through this in another less than 365 days. It's almost like we're eating each other because of the policies that are, because we don't have any other solutions. Everybody is struggling. Many people, the vast majority of people are struggling. I talk to people every day. I had a friend of mine that I went to school with, stopped in today, and he told me in my face, he said, as soon as my father's dead, I'm out of here. I was out at Russell's Supply in Burlington today. The guy behind the counter says, my wife and I are out of here. This race to get ahead of each other, to get ahead of the problem is what's causing the problem. I talked to another contractor that's in my business. We were conveying our frustrations about what's going on. And the problem is we hold off typically in the private sector from raising our price. We don't automatically increase our prices 3% plus, stipends for insurance and benefits, because a lot of those employees don't get those things. We try to hold the line because we know that the cost of housing has gotten outrageous. I don't know if the select board can have any influence on this, but I said to this other contractor today, maybe the private sector ought to unionize. Then we'll see who wins. You know, we're supposed to be, it takes all cylinders in the engine to run. And if you keep outpricing, you know, every time somebody screams and hollers, I mean, to me, unionizing is nothing more than legalized, it's not even bargaining, it's legalized, blackmail. All you do is say, we're out of here, we're done till you guys change your mind and give us what we want. How is that collaboration? How is that negotiated? It isn't. And it serves no good purpose, so try to do what you can to prevent it. There's no good end to it.
Thanks, Chris. Anything else from the public? It's not on the warrant agenda. Right. Thank you. We'll move forward. Reorganization of board officers. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I have taken a new job starting today as executive director of revitalizing Waterbury. So to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest, I am stepping down immediately as chair of the Selectboard. That opens up new positions. I will open up nominations. Okay.
I'd like to nominate Alyssa Johnson for chair of the select board.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of Alyssa Johnson as chair of the select board, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Alyssa is our new chair.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Madam Chair, it's up to you to now take on the gavel, and I believe we have a vacancy in vice chair.
Well, thank you all, just in time for a town meeting, but very excited. So yes, I was vice chair, so effective, I will resign as vice chair, and then I would introduce nominations for the position of vice chair of the select board.
Start, I'd like to nominate Kane Sweeney for the position of vice chair of the select board. Second that.
We have a motion and a second to nominate Kane Sweeney as vice chair of the select board. Any other nominations? Any additional discussion?
I'd like to say I appreciate your faith as the motion and second.
Right, motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, congratulations again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, and that gets us to our agenda ahead of schedule, unless anyone else has anything else on this item.
How about the secretary?
Oh, yeah.
I'd just like to thank Roger for his time as chair. He's done an excellent chairperson, and I appreciate everything that he's done.
Yeah, here, agreed. I will echo that sentiment as well. Just so I don't have to say all that.
I'm trying to get you out of your secretarial role.
Great, and I was premature in that Kane was technically secretary prior to this, so we now have vacancy in secretary. I will note that in practice, our clerk is generous enough to take the minutes. Thank you, Karen. But as a formality, is there any nominations for secretary of the select board?
May I ask a question before we nominate? Does anyone not want to be secretary?
Well, I almost want to say maybe we should just keep that position open because we're going to be having a new select board come, March. And in a pinch, I'm sure any one of us would be glad to take minutes. So I don't know if it's a formality to, I think it's reasonable to leave that position.
Roger?
I would say, I would agree with you. However, we are expecting to have several special meetings still going forward, and I don't think we can necessarily count on Karen to be there at each of those sessions. So I do think it will be important to have a secretary. I suppose we can identify one. Might not be a bad idea to have fall on a person that's prepared to take the minutes.
I would be glad to follow. I've been secretary for a number of long.
Yes,
I'd
Roger.
like to nominate Mike Bard as secretary.
Excellent. And there's a second. All right, so we have a nomination and a second for Mike Bard as secretary, thanks to his generous agreement. Any other nominations? Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Mike. You wanted to finish out the year with the formal title.
Yes.
All right. We don't have a board treasurer, just clarifying. All right. Still ahead of schedule. That will move us ahead to our next agenda item, which is appointment to the Recreation Committee. We have an application on our applicant is here. Alex, I don't know if you want to come up and say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Good to see you all, and thanks for the time. I know we spent a bunch of time last week or two ago. We chatted about a lot of stuff, but really excited to be applying for the rec committee. I think you all kind of got to see a lot of the work that I do with WADA, but more broadly, kind of my two passion areas, I think particularly through the lens of Waterbury and recreation, is looking at it through the lens of two prongs. One is, how are we creating an active and healthy community of residents who live here and call Waterbury home? And then the other side is we have all these incredible recreation resources. So how are we connecting them to the broader community to contribute to economic vitality in town? So those are really two big areas that I'm super passionate about. Obviously, I think Waterbury does amazing work. The recreation department already does incredible work with like traditional stick and ball and a lot of our amazing rec fields, pool, hockey rink. I mean, all that's incredible. So continuing to support that work, but then also really interested in how we can connect the town to a lot of the more outdoor recreation based recreation opportunities that a lot of folks love to do here in town and visit town for. So I think that's kind of an expertise area that I can bring to this well.
Thank you so much. Before we get to questions, I'll just say for the board's knowledge, Karen was kind enough to talk with Katarina, and it's correct. We have 3 open seats currently on the Recreation Committee for terms until April of 2025, 2026, or 2027.
All right.
So just to say that there are openings for a variety of times, so we can have that discussion later. But does anyone on the board have questions for us? Okay.
I was just gonna say, important to Waterbury's woods. And as far as I understand, being born and raised in Bedford, it's quite wooded as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think honestly, your work with recreation in Waterbury, whether directly or indirectly involved with the rec committee and the rec department, is sort of a shining beacon for me as far as your application to the committee. And then someone who has I would assume, having lived in wooded areas, say from Burlington, an appreciation for our environment.
Yes.
And that also is a shining beacon for as an advocate.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things on the environment part that I think has been really cool, kind of being the trail steward in a volunteer capacity and a trails director for WADA, is I work really closely with the district forest stewardship team for Forest Parks and Recreation. So we're working, that team's made up of foresters, wildlife biologists, wetlands and streams ecologists. So it's been really cool. I think the work of recreation management has made me appreciate our forests that much more. And yes, the forests I grew up romping around are actually permanently conserved with trails on them. So I can go home and go Nordic skiing, go for a hike or bike ride on the trails I grew up on because they're permanently conserved and battered, which is really cool. So appreciation for the woods. Thanks for making that happen.
Other questions, Mike?
I have a question, and something I've never brought up to a recreation applicant, but something I've been thinking about for a while. We have loads of different programs for recreation. You mentioned some of them, but there's some kids who like motorized recreation, anything from riding snowmobiles to motocross bikes and stuff like that. What's your opinion of engaging some of the kids who like those type activities?
Yeah, so I don't own a snowmobile now, but I have owned one. I had a 2008 Polaris Dragon, so 800cc, 155 track. I took that thing all over the Mountain West. I think that motorized recreation is definitely a really important way to get out and enjoy the woods. I think finding that balance of how we protect quiet places while also creating that access is definitely something that we always have to do mindfully. But I think definitely it's an important group to continue to engage. I used to work for Protect Our Winters, and Auden Schendler, who was our board chair at the time, he would always, one of the things he would always say, this was 10 years ago when the environmental movement was very anti-SUV, anti-big trucks, things like that. He'd always say, probably they drive an SUV because they like being outside. They drive big trucks. They like being outside. People are going out on motorized recreation vehicles because they like being outside. So I think that, engaging those communities is part of the recreation community. Just being mindful of how we balance those two with the needs for peace and quiet and environmental.
Thanks, Alex, for applying for this. And I know you've had a number of conversations with Katerina. I'm just curious, in any of those conversations, if there was anything that struck you as super exciting or anything that really kind of piqued your interest in those conversations with her about any projects that, the rec committee is taking on.
A couple things. One, I think just generally, I think talking about programming, immediately we were kind of talking about ways we can break down, particularly with the work that I do. I think a lot of the outdoor recreation sports here in Vermont trend to be a lot more adult and older oriented, and that's not necessarily the case everywhere. Where I was living in Washington, there were so many kids mountain biking. Something that I was really excited about was talking more about, how can we create more programs, more opportunities to get kids that grow up in this community involved in those sports, and then kind of putting my WADA hat on, thinking about what infrastructure is missing and needed. So that was a conversation that we had that I was really excited about. I also know long-term, there's the discussion, kind of longer, bigger picture of the rec facility, which is really exciting, and kind of thinking about, what does that look like? How does that serve future generations of Waterbury folks? How are we really continuing to create that active, vibrant, healthy community? And that can really be the focal point of that. So I think the short term is kind of some of the more programming around incorporating up the rec, and then long term that can kind of be more involved and learn more about that.
Any other questions, Roger?
I was wondering which term of office you're interested in, April 25, 26, or 27.
Feel like probably doing the April 26th is a good starting point.
So you'd serve a year plus a few months.
Yeah, and then it's up for.
Yes, we got.
Yeah. I think that would probably be a good starting commitment. And if it all goes well, we'll definitely be happy to consider a renewal. But I think that seems like a good one. April 2025 is 4 months.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone? Any questions for us?
No, I think just, we're all excited to be more involved and, definitely come in kind of with a listening, learning hat for a little bit, but then get excited to be more engaged and just know more about what's going on in town too.
So, noting that Alex has expressed interest in the unexpired term, ending April 30th, 2025. So, no, 26,
Yeah.
thank you. I looked at the 3 years all at once. Are there any motions anyone would like to make? Roger?
I move that we appoint Al Sharman to the rec committee for a term ending on April 30th, 2026. Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, congratulations, Alex. Thanks for stepping up to serve. Happy to have you on the rec committee.
Thanks, y'all. We're really excited and appreciate all the time these last few weeks. I know you're all busy, so it's been great to spend on that. All right, have a good one.
Before we move on to our next item, I will just shamelessly note that Karen has also been kind enough to note that many of our boards and commissions are looking for volunteers in the coming year. There's an application on the town website, so you too, if you're listening to this meeting, could sign up for one of the various boards and committees. All right, next on our agenda is the property known as both the Marsh House and 51 South Main Street sales tax reallocation grant agreement and updates. We have a memo from Tom on this that was included in our packet, and I'll turn it over to him to give an update.
Sure, this is, I think it's fairly simple agreement between the town and the developer. It's a separate grant agreement between the town and the state of Vermont, but our financial policies require grants of significance get approved by the board. We went to the board to apply for this some time ago. I received a pretty nice award. This is funded by sales taxes purchased on materials related to the project get funneled back into the project. So we are in essence just a pass-through entity here. We're going to pay for some expenses up front and draw down on reimbursement. But it reduces the building costs for Town Street, which is the main thing there. Taking questions from there.
Anyone have any questions on this item?
I support it fully. It's a long time. This project has taken a while, and I'm glad to see it finally happening.
Yeah, as I recall, when we spoke about this grant in 23, it was a fairly brief conversation and everyone had, so yeah, also in support. Because we're essentially just working as a pass through, right? Right. Yeah.
Right. None of that costs to us in the end.
Right.
And Tom, do you know offhand, are we eligible for this because we're a designated downtown? Or is it beyond
I
that?
believe so.
Yeah. And I just know, again, it's a program like we continue to support Revitalizing Waterbury and others. And if that's the reason we're able to get this grant, just a great reason to keep doing that.
This one was a way a lot because typically these are awarded municipalities that act as a developer directly. So in this case, this tends to be pretty agreement from us and downstream.
Other questions or discussion? Anyone from the public? Okay. And Tom, you'd be looking for a motion to approve the grant agreement between the town of Waterbury and Downstreet Housing and Community Development and authorize you to sign it. Is anyone willing to make that motion? Mike?
I make a motion to approve the grant agreement as presented and authorize the municipal manager to execute that grant agreement.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Kane. Any further discussion on this item? Yeah. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, the grant agreement is approved. We did include on this specific agenda item updates. If there were any pertinent updates relevant to this project, there's some note in the memo that Downstreet will close on the property on January 9th and preliminary work will begin this winter, and that there's a planned celebration in February, but details are still being finalized. Is there any other updates we're sharing?
Just at the closing, it's been a little bit of a marathon to get to. There were several encroachment agreements in the property that had to be worked through, because essentially EFA needed to pass clean titles downstream. There were 3 neighboring encroachments. 2 were addressed. 1 was not fully, but downstream is still willing to take title to it. We lost count of how many holes dug on the property beforehand for the archaeological work, and it's amazing what federal grants require. They did find the well, but they must have. It's hard to imagine that the architects excavate the site. They made Swiss cheese out of it 3 times over to begin with. And then one challenge is EFUD approved for me to sign the closing documents at their November meeting. The November meeting minutes were not included in December agenda and not approved. So EFUD needs the day before the closing. They have to approve the November minutes. If for some reason they don't, I'm not quite sure what's happened. I've asked the attorney 5 times over, should I request a special meeting just to ensure the minutes are approved early? He said, no, we're okay. But it's been a little bit of an issue getting to the finish line over there. Just about.
The parking lot has been closed, got a big closed sign in front of it. Have we officially stopped allowing parking there?
Not officially. We put the signs up and we'll keep it unofficial for a little bit. But we wanted to set the precedent to let people know that it's soon enough.
I did notice some cars that looked like they've been there since before the little blockade.
Yeah, there's some snow-covered cars there. 3 of them.
And once we get an exact word on groundbreaking, which will likely be before the ceremony, we'll make sure to contact the owners of the cars to be able to press the enforcement there. But yeah, they do essentially plan to do some initial site work and dig the foundation in the winter.
Chris, a question on this?
So I guess it's hard for me to hear Tom. Use state when the starting date is supposed to be.
Closing is the 9th. And there's been various dates about when they're going to put a shovel in the ground, but soon. This month is the intent. We're not obviously going to work on through, but they're going to do some of the site work and cleaning.
Those soil types over there are such that building hole and all find it.
Any other, Roger?
And has the agreement with the Methodist Church been finalized? So that we have alternative parking?
Not yet, but John may coming up soon.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, I will move us to our next item, which is armory updates, and turn it back to Tom. Again, this has been mentioned in passing at a number of other meetings. It's time to have it on the agenda on its own. I'm also going to walk over to the other side of the table, and this is the certificate of highway mileage we approved on consent that needs board signature. But Tom, armory?
I can be real quick. The armory remains quite full, has been for some time now. We haven't needed to assist the volunteers with community requests. They've done it on their own at this point. From everything I've seen, the state employee leading it is doing a good job. I haven't received any public safety complaints whatsoever. I haven't received any notice from the state police that there's been any challenges there. The only worst thing that's happened is there's been a few fire alarms. So Gary Dillon has had to go over there and just make sure there's the right protocol. And the challenge is it's housing. So if there's a fire alarm, even if it's minor, you have to leave. Bit of a challenge for families when it's 0 degrees out right now. So he's worked through that with them, but it seems to be running just fine at this point.
Questions, King?
Tom, to that point, is there any information on what's been triggering those alarms? Like just clearly,
Just people put
Yeah,
a few cases of people just didn't,
watch the pod.
watch the pod, things like that.
Well, if you watch it, you're on the board.
Thanks. Mike?
have a question. And I know sometimes you can't rely upon what you hear in the media. But it seems like from the reports that I have is the state of Vermont is not running at the Armory. Or, you know, the Armory and the one in Williston, there are outside consultants. And I know that kind of triggered our whole issue about zoning information. So where are we at with that?
The zoning administrator, I forget if he met with or had a conversation with Chris Winters, the commissioner of the agency, and he was satisfied that the state is the operator of the building. And challenge here is even if the zoning administrator was not satisfied, on his legal authority, he can essentially issue a notice of violation. I and we don't have the collective authority to essentially say no. He's got a separate and distinct legal authority. I also don't have the legal authority to say, Mr. Zoning Administrator, I think you're wrong and violate that. So it's a bit of a unique authority under the law that the zoning administrator has. But I also trust him when he had his conversation related to me that, you know, the main person running it is the state employee.
That makes me feel a little bit better because it sounds like when I'm hearing in the media that that's not the case. So
Maybe may not be the case at other facilities. You know,
right. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Ian?
There was a lot of chatter on Front Forum about the holidays over there. I was just wondering if you had any insights into how that went, and it was kind of almost a feel-good story. Waterbury residents coming together to kind of supply what was needed. I haven't heard anything.
nothing exciting.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I will move us down to final draft budget review. With the framing that we've spent most of December talking through the different items of the budget, and we'll be presenting it to the public for even more input this coming Saturday, January 11th, and Monday the 13th. So this is an opportunity if we have additional changes and edits that we would like before bringing it to the public, some of which, again, we'll discuss at prior meetings.
Just pass me that real quick.
Thank you. This is, and I have extra copies if anyone in the audience would like one. But of course, yeah.
Extra copies.
So since the last meeting after conversation, a couple numbers have been refined a little bit. The recreational facility planning and estimating, I initially had $60,000, which I said was a bit of a shot in the dark, but I wanted a placeholder in there. Since had a meeting with Bill Wilder Tuscany, with an architectural firm that did work for us before putting the fire station. And they gave me a really good number, I thought, of 17.5. And this will essentially get us a conceptual architectural design, floor plans, and then some estimating as to the final cost. Not engineering, but estimating. And they're pretty good at that, I think. These are the same folks that designed the Colchester facility, which is, I don't know exactly how big, but 2-story, 38,000 square feet. That's a recent build. And so that's a much better number than 60.
Yeah, 60 seems like it was very generous.
I also took another look at a quote for the card access security system, which came in exactly at 20. And I think I've got, through our insurance, the chance to get a grant there, but read it closely, and the budget I presented was 20. That doesn't give a lot of room for error. And there may be some design issues along the way that we want to think about a little different. So I want to have a little wiggle room there. So I suggested 25. And then there was a pretty extensive conversation about the planning commission. And after that conversation and talking again with the Conservation Commission, the budget for planning, which I also passed out, it essentially assumes that we win a municipal planning grant for $30,000, but then this would also add in an additional $50,000 for consultant assistance for the town plan, with the understanding that can reach an agreement between the Planning Commission and Conservation Commission about devoting some of that funding to the Conservation Commission, which would also inform the town plan. So in a best case scenario, we could have $80,000 for a consultant help, 30 of that, which would be a grant. And in the worst case, we still have 50, which is a pretty substantial amount. So those were the big LOT changes. The other piece is that it seemed to me, and this is in the planning budget at the bottom, and I highlighted it. It seemed to me after the last meeting, there was general select board support for increasing the base funding for the Conservation Commission, which is historically at 700, but they had a plan for some more. So I increased that. I took a look at a few other parts of the budget and made a couple of tiny tweaks to essentially keep the tax rate level, but it's pretty minimal in the end, given the scope of our budget.
And it still keeps the,
Still, it is ideally more effective. So those were the changes since last meeting.
Any questions, Mike?
I'm still a little bit confused between the $50,000 that you have on LOT for planning and conservation.
Yep.
I know the Conservation Commission asked for $30,000 to do their natural resource. Is all that money within that?
So
$80,000 that you were talking about?
yes, and I don't think they need $30,000 for that. I think we can work with them and look at some of the other work done and really refine the scope to just be work that's necessary for the town plan. And I think we can probably reduce that into the $15,000 to $20,000 range, which leaves a pretty hefty amount for the planning commission.
Okay, thank you.
And then just want to reiterate, the pool, again, we painted a small area this past year. And if it doesn't survive the winter, then figure out something else.
Other questions?
just clarify that 15-year is.
Oh, sorry, 15-yard. Sorry. It's the first person to catch that in all this time, Chris.
Great, so clarification that it's a 15-yard tandem dump truck.
Yeah, it's not going to last us 15 years.
We wish and our best. And I'll note our next item.
That's how long it's put together.
The next item is the presentation run through. And I would say editorially, we might want to just cut some of this down a little. Well, I guess, I don't know if plan on 2027 bond vote next to rec planning and facility is the right amount of information or too much information in terms of not wanting to be dishonest, and
Yeah,
the goal is to do planning and estimating for now. I'm okay with that. I'm just noting that it is quite a few steps down the road than 2025 town meeting.
yes.
Do you feel comfortable with the 17.5, Tom? Like, I'm
Yeah, that's-
inclined to say 20, but no.
It's, you know, we're asking for a pretty limited scope here, so I feel pretty comfortable with that.
Any other questions or comments for anyone on these items? Okay,
For the pool, it's like, the 55,000 for, the Flexicoat. Do you predict that you're going to have to do this every year? $55,000?
No, normally the pool is painted with sort of a standard pool paint every year or two. This is a completely different product. We did it this past summer, and we can we know how much water we add to the pool. We can also, we didn't estimate evaporation, but we know rainfall. We can calculate that. And by fixing the worst areas with this coating this past summer, we reduced our water loss pretty dramatically. And it made a big difference in terms of temperature, which is a huge complaint I've had. Too cold, too cold. You're filling it all the time. Oftentimes it's cooler than the rest. So, and this summer we
Substantially cool.
were 75 to 80 all summer. And the water loss, I think, was, certainly warmer summer than last year, but the water loss had to have. And you just keep relying on Tusky and the engineer for the town quite a bit to research these things. That the challenge is if our problems move beyond what we can see, the skimmer surface runs around the entirety of the pool and then there's a collection box. And if we need to somehow fix holes within that, we simply can't do it. There's no way we can. If you've got a water pipe, you can line the pipe. It's water main distribution, but we can't line a complex skimmer system. There's no way to cut out the parts we need to cut out. So I expect that in future years, we will likely need to replace the filter. It works okay. It's a diatomaceous earth filter, which is still perfectly fine. They don't build new pools of our size with those filters, but it's fine. But it's old and getting parts is an issue. The water department folks service it and they're pretty creative and work with this stuff all the time. But at some point it might lose a critical part. And then the pool building itself, not the filter building, the pool building itself is pretty aged. So there might be some modest upgrades there. But the hope is with this and the other upgrades in the future, we can string it along for quite a while.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Roger, go ahead.
We've identified a number of housing initiatives, including 51 South Main, Woody Avenue, and Stanley Lawson. And I'm just wondering if they have sufficient funding to bring those initiatives forward. We're focused a lot on 51 South Main, but beyond the closing, are there going to be any costs to the town?
Not beyond the closing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the Woody Avenue, I'm going to work with that in the new year to do some better estimating and bidding out the new building, the new storage building, which is the linchpin to it all.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge with that site in general, the place size.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he's reluctant to simply recommend that you pour a pad and build a new storage building because the old building had that approach and it didn't quite work out. But at the same time, we're reluctant to spend oodles of money in engineering just to pour a pad. So working with Alec and finding the appropriate balance there is going to be critical. But I still think from every indication that project can cash flow in and of itself.
And have you checked on alternatives to building another storage facility there? And any opportunities for rent storage or?
Not yet with the one location downtown. Not yet. But yeah, it's on the list to talk to the owner, get that ready, see if it's a fair.
And then Stanley Lawson.
Still waiting to hear from Wanda.
Yes. But I'm just thinking in terms, suddenly Wanda says, oh, yes, we'll subdivide and offer it to you at the agreed upon price. Do we need to have budgetary capacity to move on that?
I I don't believe we need that in 2025 because any agreement will be an option with a extraordinarily minimal down payment. And then the full payment will be development partner in the back end. So I don't think we would need that in 2025. And the whole point of working with the development partner is that we're not taking on risk for that site. We're not paying for environmental work. We're giving them a turnkey site at a pretty reasonable price, and they understand the risk. We get all the benefits that go with taking on risk.
Yeah, so.
Just about buildings, with the new, ambulance building going down here, what's the disposition of the apartment?
So the ambulance is going to, current plan is to still use a bay, which will be for the mountain rescue, which is technically part of the ambulance service. And the other bay is open. So there's been a couple different ideas. There was the initial idea to buy a trailer for crew, which would be filled with flood response materials, but crew is not in the immediate response business quite yet. That's still not a bad idea, depending on, I think, what we're told by the Metro Disaster Committee.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are conversations on the committee. I have definitely floated the idea that he wants to use that second bag as storage for immediate response items.
And we certainly have a large number of trailers we can use at any point. The thought was, if you bought an enclosed trailer, it's just ready to go all the time. At the same time, if we fill it with materials, it's not a big deal to hold them on a trailer we have. Get where they need to go.
Thomas, and so the building down here, whether it's this year or in the future, is the town's cash outlay for supporting crossing and go up? Because I know there's a discount based on the fact that.
Yep, so the cash outlay in 2024 is 128, 129. The 2025 proposal is a little over 199. But I think that now that we've crossed that big gap, future years can be inflationary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
That's fine. On that same note, Tom, you have any kind of an insight as to, sure, it's probably a little bit convoluted at this point. Starting a new building and moving down there, but out of their future finances for support of what they've taken on there, what? Again, we seem to think that per capita increases will be incremental. You have any insight as to?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of research about ambulance services, both in the area and statewide. What towns pay for ambulance coverage varies dramatically. Stowe pays around $1 million in their population, it's lower than us. Richmond pays almost nothing, and their rescue is essentially the first responder at Fulton, and that drives it. I don't know why that doesn't drive things in Stowe. There's no median, there's no real average. It's anywhere from $20 per capita to a few hundred, depending on the towns. The valley towns, Mad River Valley Ambulance doesn't charge towns anything, and they rely on volunteers. We simply don't have that core of volunteers, and that's why we've had to pay more for it over the years. Building is paid for. So the building isn't what's driving their operational costs. It's been the fact that volunteers are dwindling, and so they've then had to go to full-time paid employees increasingly.
Well, I thought the reason that the volunteerism was declining because of the criteria. You have to become this.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
why does the Wastefield have to face the same job?
So part of it is and I'm not suggesting this is the case in Mid River Valley, but the higher level EMT certifications allow you to bill more and allow you to do more. And so the smaller services will transfer those patients simply because they have to. When you have people with the higher level certifications, you're not doing the transfers, you're billing more, but it's also more costly to employ those people. So it's a struggle in rural towns nationwide. I think it's going to be a struggle for some time. The state has recognized it a little bit better, and they've increased the Medicaid rates at least for ambulance services, not dramatically, but there was a long time where they didn't go up at all. But I think now that we've given them this big jump, I really do think that they're on a much more sustainable path.
I think too, that everything you said is absolutely true. The one thing that is the cost of it is that the municipality has to.
100%.
Why keep glossing the picture for saving money?
That was my kind of roundabout way of
Yeah,
not saying that, but saying for fear of that happening.
the minute we own it, we double or triple the costs, guaranteed.
Any questions? All right, I'll note we will somewhat stay on the budget topic with the Have Your Say Day presentation run through. So again, noting that the two upcoming dates are Saturday, January 11th at 10 a.m. at the Legion. Bring a pie. I'm going to Costco on Friday. I'm very excited. So there will be some Costco pies, assuming they're available. And then also at our meeting on Monday, January 13th at 7 p.m. That one will be at the Grange Hall Cultural Center in Waterbury Center. But at that, we are going to present the budget to voters. Tom was kind enough to put together some PowerPoint slides so we can look at those together and then just have a discussion about how we want to do that.
Should have done.
I don't think we should do it, so I think you're doing okay. And don't mind us, Tom has been talking all meeting and we're going to do some technical logisticating so that we can run through this
And I just did
together.
a real quick, just a real quick skeletal thought. So don't even call it a presentation yet, but I
And
just
outline.
get an outline about some of the major drivers here.
So you're not putting on the screen?
I'm zooming in now.
Oh, sorry.
I think I can start, and I think I'll just co-host.
That's fine.
Oh, and then that's asking text first. That work? I'll give it a second. So just real simple. No part of authorship. I just put a few basic things on paper to get the conversation started. I didn't know if the select board wanted to. I know there was some conversation about board members taking individual departments. I just hit highlights. I know in general, sometimes my style is don't put much in a slide and don't talk about what's on the slide. Just give additional information beyond what's on the slide. But other people may have other ideas.
In terms of process, do we want to take some time to review this or review it as a group in terms of open discussion and we're seeing this for the first time?
I think we can review it slide by slide, can we?
Yeah, I think that'd be great, Tom, if you don't mind, we can just kind of go through and talk through it.
Is there a date on the top?
Budget proposal for 2026.
26.
That's a great catch. Just at this, minutes before this meeting, so.
And are we starting on the same slide? Tim? I feel like the order is a little different.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The last bullet is at 25 revenue, so take,
Yeah, Mike?
This is a general comment. This is what these slides are what we're gonna be presenting as on Saturday,
Okay.
Yeah.
I was missing that top page. I'm not using it.
starting point. I'm just, for those people who are more want to look in depth, I know I always, even when I wasn't on the select board, I looked at the,
Yeah, we'll have the whole,
okay, you will
we'll have
have,
the whole budget.
okay, it's not just gonna be this. Good question.
So yes, clarification, and I think we put it in the post that's on the town website. Materials will be available here 1/8 so that we have this meeting for any changes we want to agree with. And then assumedly can put both the full PDF in all its delightfulness and any other things we think are important. Great, so starting with local option tax. And notes about things even before it. Then we proceed to the proposal specifically for this. The next one.
Is that 2025, is that 2024 revenue?
Yes.
And we've made additional allocations of that 2024 revenue, right? Yeah. I'm wondering if we should specify that too. It's not necessarily relevant, but this very, well, I'm just noting like this very directly impact, we paid for additional paving and the skate park with other uses we used out of that 2024 as well as the housing trust fund. I mean, maybe it's just one bullet to say we made additional allocations of X amount total for uses including XYZ. But love the note that this helped make this year's budget easier.
And do we want to address the remaining funds, anticipated funds
Yeah, that's a good note.
for the 24, the estimated revenue from LOT funding for 2024 that we have not allocated as of yet.
Sure, can, yeah.
Just to note that we anticipate that it's going to be an additional $100,000 thereabouts. What will be added revenue without allocation as of yet. Yep.
And we could also note the policy. I don't want it to be too wordy, but that could just be something we talk through around the approved uses for it. Context that brings us to the next slide. Any other notes on this?
I think noting the approved uses as the first sub bullet point, like we're supposed to put that as to what we intended the funding to be used for.
On this slide or the next, you think?
I think this one's fine, if you have room.
And in terms of framing, we can note that this is the new and different thing, in terms of budgeting this year for Waterbury. This is new and different,
That's the money.
and inform the rest of the thing. And I feel strongly about wanting to help co-host this. So the point, I guess we can address after, I will say,
to quote Bill Sheplock, it's the board's budget and we have to stand up and present it. So we're happy to have Tom pinch it and help with presentations, but if it's relevant for any of us to provide overview or context.
I'd be glad to co-host the first slide. Then quietly sit down and go away.
Yeah, and then say, wow, I'm so glad I'm not chair anymore. Great, does that bring us to the next one then?
First and second kind of related.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean.
I'll also just name, like, again, Roger, for the, it doesn't have to be on the slide, but I think we can recognize Tom and Teresa in terms of getting this through. Again, just the context of how this happened. This is an opportunity to report back on.
Yeah.
You all asked us at a special meeting. We've already have the revenue hitting books. Here's how we're using it, and here's how we plan to use it.
That's why you did it.
Yeah, I think it was a header. Yeah.
I did the first slide and copied it, 7 times.
Yeah. Also recurring errors.
I won't say it again.
So we will date everything for 2025. It's the grace period in which mistaken years are allowed, I think. Dating 24. So we just talked about this in budget discussion. So these are all things that are included as part of the budget elsewhere, but just reflecting that comprehensively as this is the package funded.
I'll remove the A's in parentheses. They were related to the 5-year, but yeah, I can kill those for this.
Yeah, and I guess again, that's Roger, if you're posting, but note, so we already approved the fire truck. We anticipated timeline on the public works vehicle. We don't have to start there, but I'm just assuming this was all strategically done. Any other pieces here?
Do you want, I can, these items, I can talk about each one at length if you want, really quickly. But I can hit these items individually if you want.
Yes.
I would suggest just putting the bullet points on each item. Yeah. It doesn't have to be longer, but.
Right.
Yeah, if there's questions, people ask questions, right? So planning on questions at the end of the presentation?
That's a good question. We could talk around structure in terms of, are we doing it kind of like these meetings where board, we've asked questions, but where we do it for each item or pause at strategic intervals. It feels like local option tax is a chapter, so to speak. So perhaps at the end of those two slides.
Chapter one.
Chapter 1, LOT.
Should we also have in slide 2, in the chart where it says public works vehicle, say that it's for, a 15-yard and I know that's going to be a question for people. Yeah.
Which I guess directly relates to gravel roads.
Right.
For planning conservation, should I call that town plan update instead or something like that?
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, it's smart.
I think, we all know what like planning and conservation, what that's going for, but someone, Joe Q Public, who's not been following all of our discussions is not gonna, they're gonna say, what's that $50,000 planning? So I think we're a big part of it, so.
And essentially that we had items that, the 2024 revenue, which these are the pieces that are then building into the rest of the budget that we're going to present, but specific items are tied to LOT bill.
So just the last statement there, because considering the policy, what he's saying. So is the $240,000 balance in the LOT? Or is it $240,000 fund balance.
LOT.
So,
Don't assume I know what I'm saying. That's
yeah, so it's just, when I look at it, it's like, okay, are we talking about, is that the overall fund balance for the general fund, or is that, that's a couple of 2 months?
Yeah.
So if you can just be, the more specific you can be on the slides, I think the more.
Absolutely. And I would say, we could say based on, is that based on a 750 projection?
Yeah.
Like based on a 750 total projection, remaining 240 top.
And that doesn't include the 100,000 that we're anticipating for 25.
that would be the whole way you told it. Yeah.
Okay.
Question on this. That first bullet point, if I work on the select board, I don't have no idea what that means. If that makes any sense, because I read that as double-digit tax increase and then would fail to meet the rest.
Right.
So, I guess, is there a way to clear up that sentence to make it make more sense to someone who doesn't read budgets?
Just change it to say prevents double digit.
Yeah, right. People would like to hear that that's what the options tax is doing, helping us from having more of a tax increase.
But that's
Any other things on, other questions, comments on this section?
I don't know if it was in my minutes or one night here at a meeting, but somebody online said, what's LOT? So I started, with an agenda item, I'd write local options tax with brackets. I don't know if you want to include that in your header.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to use LOT throughout the,
Right.
define it
Line
somewhere.
with LLP right there.
First line.
I don't know where it's appropriate. I'm just suggesting it.
Good idea.
I hate abbreviations.
Well, I think they're great.
A government guy like you,
All right, Acronym, we are editing in live time, people, we're making it happen. All right, I'm gonna keep us continuing, fellow board members. We love acronyms, we're proceeding.
I don't like acronyms.
Okay, well, we remedied the acronym. So starting off with local option tax, Roger will be co-host for this segment, if we're calling it co-host. Chapter, yes, for this chapter, whatever convention we're using at this point. So now we're moving to the general government chapter.
My commentary on the police one would be, police is a 3-year contract, but it's July 1. So the 2025 budget amount is 477,000. That does not change in 2026 or 2027. It will. So you get whacked with big increases every 3 years, and then it's flat.
Comment in a second, public safety expenses, it reads like increase from $128 to $200,000.
The ambulances are expensive.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question on the last one, I mean, that I feel like it's adding more complication. I also, in particular, around the appraisal that have been something we allocated our funding to, which I assume that was just fund balance, but, or I guess it's a question.
That has changed, yeah.
Yeah, so. If we think it's, I mean, it's a reality, so to the extent we feel like it impacted.
It's just been a big topic of conversation in the last few years, so I'd be just
Yeah.
that it's done. But
Do we want to note that as its own? So maybe it's putting it back and just saying ARPA funding has been completely allocated as of the end of the year to these things. I mean, that might be on that slide in of itself, but.
just say ARPA fund is completely allocated by the end of 2024.
Yeah, and that was by law,
Yeah.
right? And
Say it when it is.
anyone particularly interested in this chapter as a co-host?
Might be.
Mike, general government guy.
I assume that's the next the two slides going.
Yeah, we can see this is having not been through this and making it up as we go. Doo-doo-doo.
Yeah, the next,
I would say this is the overview. This is the overview. Yeah, that's fine. We specify the, I guess, debt action is reduced based on the use of local option tax this past August. That's what they are. I'm so confused if I like the phrase quiet pension. I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't.
Personally.
Oh, I thought it was a play on words because libraries are quiet. That's where my mind went immediately. I was like, oh, quiet library, yeah.
Then leave it in, let the public weigh in. I certainly don't need to tip the
The
scale.
reality is our library can get pretty rowdy.
You're an obnoxious library.
Yeah.
But the budget isn't there.
Yeah, it's not.
What are we gonna call it? It's just something. Black budget.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Never heard of it.
I like
I've never heard of a quiet budget.
I like to play on words person.
All right, cool.
It was loud last time.
For what's the planning and zoning, the proposal, I don't know if we, I'm looking at the next one around maintain cemeteries, and to me, I have no context as to if that's more or less or
Yeah,
the
is that
same
an
than
increase or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a decrease actually compared to last year's budget.
Right, which just, the general public has to
Would
so
you
much.
want to put what the consultant is doing? Versus just LLP funds the consultant help complete required updated town plans, you know, I think people are gonna want to know what the funding, because that's the budget's pretty significant.
You flesh out some detail there.
Yeah, it really was two, as I remember, two different components to it. One was to help the conservation, commission.
Natural resource inventory.
Yes, do their natural resource inventory, and then the planning commission asked for additional support for
Or to do that.
public interaction on the town plan.
I think we want to spell that out, because I think that's going to create a lot of issues in the public.
Yeah, it's not one.
Okay, I can add something there.
And also, I think, you know, where it talks about 50K to maintain cemeteries. Is that because we're taking on more responsibility for cemetery maintenance?
It's not 50K more, just a net,
That's just the,
just a net cost.
yeah,
Just a cost.
yeah, he just indicated that it's actually a reduction in the
Yeah, it said, I,
budget. So maybe just
just saying
reframe.
what it is to, you know, what maintenance,
So it was a reduction in
right?
cemetery, cost to maintain cemeteries due to reallocation of the workforce.
Right, that's a good word, right?
Yeah.
Anyone excited by this slide?
Excited?
Yeah, that quiet budget or well, by being the content of this chapter or whatever we're terming. Or is Mike?
I thought that was kind of.
Yeah, you can continue. I don't have a total slide, so we.
Stuff, you know, I'd be glad to help.
Okay. That's good. Any other questions? I'll just need Tom for the planning and zoning, and it is.
Should I do this? Thinking my time. Natural resource and said support for public interaction.
I would say public engagement and outreach first. We're really
I
excited.
would,
to
yeah,
talk about
that'll sell
high.
it more.
And I would expect some questions on the natural resource inventory.
Yeah.
Just petition that I dropped off here today.
Absolutely, members of the Conservation Commission there that will address that. One could only hope. One could only hope, exactly.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I will say of our approved uses, are we saying that's a municipal investment using LOT for a consultant?
So,
No, that, what capital expenses. All right, on to the next one.
Just briefly, I did like what Roger said, due to, what did you say about the military?
Really,
Management, the allocation,
it's really that we were able to hire, Stan Morris, who's firefighter for us for years, and a crew of high school kids. It's a whole lot cheaper and better than contracting it out for $1 million a month. And they really have this in very so that.
Down from 1 million a month.
I'll take that. For $1 million a month. I'll take it for 900.
I'll do myself.
And I considered resigning and just moving along for the summer.
Sorry, I didn't ask. Any other? Onward?
Onward and upward.
Good, and upward to the highway department. And I'm excited about the highway check. It's the gravel roads. The gravel roads.
Yeah, I'll take this one.
And the couple, the bullet there about paving, I get a few additional, there's a list, I can get a few additional roads on there.
Yeah, definitely do. I think having a list of roads that were done in the last year and the list of roads to be done.
Yeah.
The ensuing years.
And I think overall, my assessment is that our paved roads, none of any that are terrible. There's a couple sections that are rough, but I think they're in pretty much good shape.
That's what people want to know. They want to know what has been done, what's going to be done.
Yeah, I'll take it.
You might want to include people into that, certain bridges as state project is going to be disrupted.
Yeah, right.
I thought you were gonna say, and local portion has been paid, which is what I wrote in my notes, because I also think that's relevant.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
Have 4 items. That's
Yeah.
going to be.
It could have another place.
Just
will be getting, it's like, what will be
Yeah.
the bridge? But what happened on the bridge? The bridge is a big place.
And I just wanted to put there for exactly those reasons, just to make the note that it's not, it's getting done, but don't call me to complain.
Schedule the closing for the first weekend in October.
I could say this is a state project that will involve a 60-day closure, because we have approved that, I mean.
Say so.
To your point, Roger,
You won't have to put up signs about closing roads.
it would free up Stowe Street to move up through Lincoln and then up around Ferry Hill.
That's right.
Any other highway notes folks feel like are important?
Is this an appropriate place to say I was glad to their retirement? Is there an announcement?
Not an announcement, but that's the reality. But I wanted to highlight that because we've got several people who are near retirement.
I see. But I read it, I understand somebody who has retired.
It says it's going to be,
Speculatory.
not really, but But it's gonna be a story in the future about how we replace those folks and navigate that.
So maybe you lead with the second clause.
See, now that I read that's.
Why don't I just X that out?
I know no one wants to be in the business of mentioning increased costs, especially since we're trying to make this happy-go-lucky, we flatline the budget. But should we mention the increased cost of gravel in general with how much we're spending on it?
I think that's part of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could make a point of thinking, and I'm sure most people are aware of the fact that the pit is closed and it's kind of the whole, our community along with 7 others around us, we do use the other sources that are already being extracted from other towns in their area. We'll put more pressure on them. I was just thinking about this whole issue. Nothing, the needle hasn't moved on the quarry I put up on Sweet Road, so at some point, I bet you that'll come back around because we have exhausted these other resources from these other communities because now they're being forced there and they're already serving their communities. It's a big one and the state's not recognizing it.
I think you're overly, I don't want to phrase this. I think less people know about like the closure of the Bolton pit and things like that than you think. People in the know about that, but I think there are a lot of people who have no clue as to what's happening with different pits around. You know, it's there.
No,
Well, it's not like that. Most people don't even know there's a gravel shortage. Right.
Well, most people even know where those stuff on those comes from. So, yeah. But Stephanie, there was information in last year's town report, for those who read this stuff, there was some foreshadowing in the stand that we're telling about the gravel products for last year in contrast. Those of us who read the town.
And of course, more likely to put that out on the resources.
All right, I'm gonna say continue on unless there's else here. We're on to recreation.
The only one that hasn't been assigned yet, so.
Is that you?
I think it's ready to get in.
All right, our committee liaison Ian, time to shine with recreation. I'm wondering about an overall summary bullet, similar to our cemetery friends, which we're noting program costs and revenues are down equally. I mean, do we have an overall high-level summary, like approximately the same budget as prior years, excluding these specific capital investments, or is that not a true statement?
That's a pretty true statement. I mean, think about something that.
Yeah.
Probably should mention right up front the reorganization of the select board, you know, hierarchy. When you're being appointed, you know.
At the meeting.
Right.
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, we can do a whole intro and question format.
I think that's true,
Yes.
because
Who's gonna
as you can see,
MC?
we don't have too many people on the Zoom and stuff like that, so.
I love a microphone, it's no problem.
In retrospect,
I'm sure it's all about it.
retrospect, a little bit matter.
We'll get more years that way.
It was
Yeah,
the vote about the summer program costs and others are being down.
yeah,
And then the vote below that, it says, can we turn to higher numbers? I think implicit in that is the number of people that you're expecting to serve is going to be low. It doesn't really say that. It says revenues are down.
yep,
But I think people should know, hey, I might not be able to sign that, you're not, right? If we have to really count it, it should be explicit.
yeah. We could say budget based on recommended appropriate camp size of 75 or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
increase,
Yeah, let me think
lead
about
with what the programmatic. Thing
And I'm
is.
sure you have the numbers somewhere. Right?
Yeah, I do.
So people understand.
Right, the premises and numbers, it's going to need children,
Yeah.
right? It's like enrollment will be reduced and it could be higher if we're staff in the next, but
Looks like this
it's
is
just that the enrollments.
We mean, we're now live editing Tom's work that as our financial manager, he has framed in revenues terms. And those of us lay
I've got an
people,
editor helping me edit. I'll take the help.
we're translating in live time.
Last meeting, we had to talk about the how you said the announcement, we had to uncommon a little bit.
Right.
It was a technical legalese. I want to make sure we don't lose Ian.
Yeah, I was just thinking, is that 50 net cost for the pool, is that 55 is stated?
Yeah, it's always in the range of 50.
Okay, I just because our pool voting on the second
Yeah,
slide.
55.
They're distinctly different. This is an operational cost, but we should,
Oh.
my assumption is that this staff making that operational.
Gotcha.
But we should probably re-note the plan to use 55K additional $55,000 in local options.
Is that considered a capital cost?
Yeah.
And 55K?
After another strike with talent, dealing with it. So. LRT funds.
Okay. If we're defining it for each of them. I think that's why. On the town parks, is that again consistent with my other, just in terms of landmarking, like, is that a lot? Is that what we were?
It's up a little bit. I gotta dig into that. But
Okay. I think just like a light context of a slight increase due to. I was thinking we can bold the subject, that was funny. Someone should go clip our wild on this, I'm just saying. Rec person. I'm down to tax implications, is that correct?
Yes.
Almost said you raised your hand yet?
I had not. You giving me the summary slide?
So,
All right, it's not a bad one.
I think he's good.
Yeah.
She would be delivering the good news. It says no tax increase necessary.
Right, but well, some people want to see a tax cut.
Yeah. Oh, let's not get into
Yeah, go ahead.
2026 will be more difficult using LOT to manage debt release. Pressure over time I think that needs more context.
how I would explain it is we're purchasing equipment for fire and public works using LLT funds, not property taxes. And so it's essentially debt not impacting your taxes. The portion of debt we've already incurred in property that impacts your taxes will continue to go down over time. It's not dramatic in 2026. 2026, if we don't incur new debt that's serviced by property taxes, our debt will go down $10,000 or $12,000. 2027, 50 or 60. So you get these, kind of depends on the schedule, but you get these constant decreases so we can just keep using LOT to service things, at least the smaller things we typically borrow for. So that's how I would explain it. I'm happy to revise the law. It really is a pressure level, right? So
Yeah, I'm wondering about framing 3 in terms of
I
current.
can just leave 2026 alone. Take the whole thing.
I think
Maybe you
it's,
should just say, instead of 2026, just say, future budgets will continue to present challenges by using LLT.
Also, specific, this might sound kind of specific, we should put, property tax increase necessary in 2025, as we did increase taxes with the property tax. Just not on properties.
We can be even more specific, I would say, draft budget as proposed requires no increased property taxes in 2025.
I mentioned that it should say no property tax increase in 2025.
Because there was,
And this was tax increase.
And this was CLA.
Well, there will be, no municipal.
I think
But it's the legislature and the education, they're gonna be sort of talking about right now.
No municipal.
You should actually, if you want to be really clear about it, you should say, does not require municipal tax rate increase, because you just said 2 months above, and that increase is $16,000 in taxes. So your grand list is going to prevent tax rate increase. Taxes are going up.
Right.
Be specific, their overall net budget increase. Be technical, do a little, then final summation.
Did you just say this board was giving us fun?
Let's, no, I was trying to avoid final summation, but it's not.
And if people want to dig into more detail in the complete budget, where do we address those questions? Should we
I'm envisioning.
pause at the end?
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just suggesting perhaps we need to sort of pause at the end of each section to say, we're glad to entertain questions about the detailed budget on this section.
Yeah, so in terms of overall structure, and I'm just, because Mike mentioned this too, I'm wondering, so we have next meeting agenda, we're all going to be there, we're discussing town business, so we'll warn it as a select board meeting and open it. But then I think we can give an overview of the format and say, we all met, we have a couple high-level overview slides, orient folks to, there are printouts of, the budget available, so feel free to follow along. We're happy to answer questions both about the summary slides and the details. I don't know if we want to do just summary and then all the details, or have both by section. Not every single thing is from the full budget is included in these 7 summary slides. But then structure, so it sounds like I'm hearing you say, Roger, after each of our chapters, we would pause for questions.
I think that is one way to do it in a way that's not, if we just open it up to detailed questions at the end, we'll be all over the place and be difficult to follow.
So you want to both do it after each section, both questions on the bullets and on the specifics of that budget section?
Yes,
Which
I think that makes most sense to me.
Does that, other questions, comments from the board? Chris?
Questions and comments.
Yeah, good questions. Or I guess it's a question for us as a board, because I will say we frame this as an opportunity for input. So do we do a run through just on questions, like I don't understand, and then do open input? Or input as we go, like, the goal is to get feedback. There's questions like, what does 60K mean? Is that more or less?
I don't think we need to distinguish between questions and comments. We have to just open it up.
Yeah. For each section, I like the section approach.
Section approach, Mike?
Are we gonna have some point in this discussion, I don't know whether at the end, to have, is this something that folks want to have as an ongoing thing
Yeah.
in lieu of, formal town meetings?
Yeah. I think that's a great
Because I think
suggestion.
we need to figure that out, because otherwise, I assume we're gonna have, if we have all in favor, all against, well, say we have all in favor, want to have this format, that we would have some sort of a warning on town, meeting that changing the structure of
Yeah.
next following years.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think
maybe we add that as a bullet around like next steps in terms of, just to say like what we've outlined as a process. Use the input from these meetings to help inform the budget that we're running for town meeting. We're having a floor town meeting in March, and then we're also gonna include the question on future format. But getting input on this early certainly makes sense. Yeah.
One suggestion from editorial comment and then second to ask budget. We usually talk about municipal tax rate increase of 2%, 3%. It does not require playing this backwards way. So maybe draft budget requires a 0% municipal tax rate increase. Yeah. Instead of those 9.
Other questions or comments? So we feel good about, Tom, if you want to maybe just for now as a placeholder, add a slide 8 and say next steps and town meeting format. I'm happy to host it if no one else feels strongly about it.
All depends upon how good the pies are.
We're doing it for the conversation, not the visual. That's how I'll say it. The conversation is leading it. Yeah, so we can emphasize our plan in terms of the board. I did lean over to Karen earlier to ask, we should confirm all our deadlines for what we need to have it warned by our proposed plans. So that we can share those with people.
Maybe you already said this, maybe this is. Are we going to attendance from going to town for all as?
Yes, our intention is to provide full printouts of what we're planning, noting it could be.
Ask a question about a particular line item.
Yeah.
So if they jump ahead, we can say, when we get into that.
I know, that's good, thanks.
And we can just note that too. I assume we can print these with page numbers and then maybe we'll just have scripts for, for each of us when you're doing your chapter. You can say, okay, we're now on pages 3 and 4, which is highway.
Different colors.
Different colors?
Different color.
You're gonna color code it? That is expensive, I will say, and a little logistically complicated, but
We don't have a color printer.
well, feel free to ask. I don't.
You said colored paper.
Oh, yeah, I meant paper. I assumed paper. It was not actually stated, but
You have a color copier here. It does cost more per copy to print in color. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So when we get the bill every quarter, it'll show color copies.
strong feeling in regards to.
I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I'm going to change the last statement there about the requirement for tax increase.
What?
I'm like, oh, God.
Except for the rainbow of paper provided. All right. We are at 8:38 and I know we have more to do. Do folks have other questions, comments, things that feel like they need to be resolved?
When are we going to schedule the pie?
When are we going to schedule the pie? Say more about what you mean by that.
Well, I noticed in Duxbury, they start earlier with the pie at 8:30. And then they allow everyone to eat the pie. And then they get down to
Hour and a half to eat the pie.
8:30 and then 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay,
talking
they're 9,
about
okay.
budget. After everyone's already happy with pie in their belly.
It's gonna get the pie too, so like, when you sit down, you have your dish, you still are having your pie.
Yeah, you probably get blueberry on the highway.
Oh,
You don't have to wait long, but
We've already got public at 10 o'clock, so do
Yeah.
Everyone get there, they have pie, we wait 30, 45 minutes, then we start.
I think 15. I would
Yeah,
say my
15.
recommendation is going to be in our, albeit limited advertising, we've said 10 a.m. So I'm inclined to convene at 10 a.m., but realistically let folks trickle in until 10:15 and call the meeting formally to order closer to 10:15.
But good people can go for the pie as soon as they come in.
Oh, yeah, the pie is to get you in the door. And what type of pie are you making, Patrick? Or bring,
I'm going with chippy crust and Probably a Blueberry.
Right? And does anyone want to offer an estimate as to the pie to person ratio of this event, which
I think there will be more pie people.
more pies than people? Well, I hope that we adjust that ratio in a different direction.
I have no problem with that.
That always happens to Rotary. There's always way more pie than
That's great. Can't have too much fun.
And mostly just butter dry. Use the chefs.
Mine's gonna be a little messy.
Any
I was
other,
gonna go buy it. I don't cook unless I'm getting paid.
other questions for any of this? I'll note that gravel and pie thus far are the hardest topics to keep the board on topic for, but I guess there's worse things.
That's a Vermont thing ever.
I have one question.
Roger,
This is for Saturday. And then we have the same deal on
no pie.
Monday.
But no pie.
No pie.
No pie, but same general presentations. Do we incorporate any comments that we received on Saturday into the Monday presentation?
good question. It sounds like you're talking about our next agenda item, next meeting agenda. But I hear what you're saying. In more seriousness, what do people think? I mean, we have the input. We could certainly acknowledge them. I will say, we did this on Saturday and heard the following feedback. And then I was anticipating part of our meeting time on the 13th would be to incorporate all of the feedback from both days. But I don't know when and the timing we do that between Saturday and Monday. That's just my feeling. Do other have input or thoughts? Ian?
Just in terms of feedback, I like that our last slide is specific to feedback. Does it make sense to also have an option for written feedback? I feel like for a QR code that they could scan to give with Google form and they can, so they don't have to necessarily publicly state their feedback because
To tack on to. I think it would be hard to gather, as a board, to gather the feedback and get prepared for the next meeting in a day's time with no one to get together. Yeah. So do we just compile comments from both? For further consideration?
Did you have a particular vision, Roger, around?
Well, I just thought it might be to avoid duplication or something might be an opportunity while we're doing the second presentation on the Monday night to say we did receive some feedback on this to the effect of blah, blah, blah. But I guess that would be recorded in the minutes and we can, as Kane suggests, attempt to try to assimilate suggestions, comments, etc. And the following meeting into any adjustments to the budget.
Do you want to, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Just to make sure, I know the answer, but we're not doing Zoom at either of these meetings.
We are, just for fun and excitement. We did advertise it as having this as an option.
Okay, because that creates a whole nother set of issues, potential issues.
Yeah, I agree. We were told the Wi-Fi is good in both locations, and
Well, that's
so
what I'm,
as we do with
that's
these
what I'm thinking.
meetings, it was an offering. Yeah, it was
I
good.
was asked to ask a question because you were down. You guys bringing up the question about town meeting being format on town meeting day as well, or just at the.
Great question. The plan was to do both to solicit input at this prior one and then include it at town meeting. Again, to state for the record, to change the format of town meeting to be not an in-person town meeting requires an in-person town meeting. We've asked about it in an advisory way at past town meetings, but if it's not warned, there can't be a binding decision. So our intention was to warn it. If everyone who comes to town meeting wants to keep town meeting, we will keep town meeting. And if we want to have a discussion about changing it, we could do so at town meeting. Other questions, Bill? And so,
So, will the proposed budget, the finalized proposed budget, be available maybe on the website?
Yeah.
Or Saturdays?
Yes.
Yeah, assuming that it's office.
yeah, we said 1/8, we'll put it on the town website for people.
Well, that was one of my questions. Thank you. Somebody asked me this question today, and I haven't really thought this far down the road. When we get to town meeting day and there's an article proposing, do we want to change the format of town meeting? And that meeting is on the Tuesday morning, when it's just the people who show up on Tuesday morning. Will it be a possible option at that meeting for someone to potentially say, yes, we should have this vote, but maybe we shouldn't be having this vote on a Tuesday morning in March? And can we propose a town meeting at another time, when it could be in the evening or a more accessible time, to have a more inclusive vote on that question? Do you know what I mean? Instead of having that subset of people that can only come to that meeting making that decision. And I was like, well, that would be a discussion point for that meeting. Like, do we want to decide this right now, or do we want to say, yes, we want to have this vote and it warrants its own meeting next time?
I guess I would defer to Tom, and I mean, legally it has to be another warrant meeting. I don't know if there's something as to voting it down once and revisiting
If
it.
it's warned as a town meeting day question, you have to vote on the question.
Right.
So they can vote it at the
But if somebody could someone make a new motion at that point to propose that another meeting be scheduled to actually have that question discussed with water?
So
Technically, you could, the town meeting could access the meeting to another day, pretty much. And so you've got a warm town meeting for March or whatever the date is. And then that discussion can come up. The town meeting will assess for the future days that one.
Yes, that last slide.
It's the same.
Yeah.
But it's probably just easy. I mean,
no matter what the.
what day of the week is there a subset of people that aren't able to come?
Whether it's noon morning, whether it's evening, it's all gonna be different people on them.
Elderly people don't want to come on at night, people with kids can't come on, you know, so there's no date, but everybody's got to be.
So I'm hearing a variety of conversations of, it sounds like there is some possible potential options through a variety of factors, either on the floor and separate warning. Anything else you want to add on that?
Not just that, we'll make sure that our moderator is well briefed on the possibilities here.
I was just gonna say, on our to-do list is schedule discussion with the moderator.
Can I make one last comment?
Yep, go ahead.
I've been pondering through my head as to this effort to expose more of the information to the public in a couple of sections. People at night coming out there may give, this is Andrew, your question, as to what different demographics may or may not show up. It may just be the same people, it may be a whole different variety of people. I'm questioning myself as to whether or not this is a slow walk to eliminating the traditional town meeting. Obviously, for me, I hate to see that go. It would be the end of an era. In a certain defined change in Vermont. And recognizing what's happened in Duxbury just since they had changed their option about town meeting. From your discussion the other night, it seemed like you made reference to the fact that the informational meeting was full maybe the first year, second year it's starting to decline. I'm curious to see if it declined even more this year to a point where people just become disconnected. For people like me who are a pain in the ass and show up to every meeting, I know the direction of the town, so if I can put input in to what's going on when you allow me to, that's great. So I don't, to see town meeting disappear, it's going to bother me. But I just wonder if what's the end result? Are the townspeople, because of the elimination of town meeting, are they just going to become disconnected even more than they are now? What will be the results? have going through my head, we enter this process. Less engagement with what's going on. That would be, you know, I'm disappointed because I know the room's full now, but
I was gonna say, I guess what I would say is we can't do anything with that. It's certainly a topic of discussion you can bring up at these meetings and on March 4th. I mean, we as a board have made the decision to ask the question, but that's really it. So will ultimately be up to the voters. Anything else anyone on the board wants to add?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there is data to show that the Australian ballot results in higher voter turnout than your typical town meeting day. Yeah,
I'm just, what I'm concerned about is the problems that arise from just Australian ballot. How many people are actually informed? They're just pissed off when they don't know on the budget or whatever, and things get shot down. And there's really no concept of why it is what it is. Where at town meeting, at least you have that opportunity in these informational meetings, you have that opportunity to understand where you guys are coming from. So that it doesn't create problems down the road for you. And then, you know, it's obvious that in this country, trust for government is becoming, is on the decline all the time. And you know, to strike that out of our process of engagement and like this, who knows what the people are doing yet.
All right, we are at time, so I'm going to call it. Does anyone have anything else on this? All right, I will just note, we will need to go through logistics. I can be there at 9 or before 9 for whatever setup is needed with the Legion and coordinate with Tom. But any other logistics?
no, I can be there. Yeah, it's been a week.
Sounds like a 9 a.m. contingent of select board for setup.
With pie in hand.
Hi. All right, I will move us to our next one, which is related, which is our next meeting agendas. We have several, so noting that we're going to warn Have Your Say Day. I guess the agenda can be, you even need to approve an agenda, I guess approve an agenda if we want to approve the minutes and the public. And we can just say we're not really doing public, but then say review and input on town budget. Is there anything else that needs to be on the agenda? I truly think it's a formality for Have Your Say Day. So the 11th is our next one. We'll see it. Karen was kind enough to draft for us, so it's Have Your Say Day. Yes, go ahead, please.
Do away with your consent agenda. You might not even have minutes ready.
Great, perfect, thank you. Exactly the input I'm looking for. So Jess, agenda with one item, Have Your Say Day that we will approve and then just proceed to. Any other input, thoughts, different things from the board? Ian?
Just noting in person, it's Steel Community Room. We want to change that.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yep. I missed that. No, I'm talking about the next one.
So we have, one will be approve the agenda. And then we could say at 10:15, Roger, Have Your Say Day.
Okay.
We think that. Approve agenda and eat pie could be item 1 at 10 a.m. And then at 10:15, Have Your Say.
Mhm. Use napkins.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Budget review and input, and we said we would adjourn at noon, if not before.
That sounds good.
Sorry,
Waterbury,
normally these are like being said aloud and I'm typing, and this time I feel like there's this mental connection between the 5 of.
There's a mental swirl and we're brain thinking away. That's not happening. So our proposed agenda for Saturday, January 11th at 10, we had item 1, approve agenda plus eat pie. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay. Then at 10:15, we had Have Your Say Day, budget review and input.
Okay.
Draft budget review. And then at 12, we had adjourn, if not before.
Okay. Well, budget.
Anything else we need on that one? Great. And then next meeting, we have the 13th. All right, 13th.
Which also needs to be corrected to the Grange Hall.
Yep. Sorry, I mean, that, thank you.
Great.
You meant the year, right? I'm not saying.
So for this one, approve agenda. Do we want consent or do we want to wait?
So we starting at 7, I know there's no 5.
Right, so at 7 PM then we'll remove, so we'll do have your say day, budget review and input.
Waterbury Winterfest is going to request the closing of Elm Street on Friday, I think it's the 1st of February.
So you can put that in the bin.
I'd like to put that in the consent agenda for the Monday meeting, if possible.
13th or the 20th?
13th.
We could do a consent agenda after have your say day. Like, you know, in terms of input, do we want to do have your say day like 7 to 8? I don't think it'll be that long, but, and then do a consent agenda and any other business. Does that make sense? Okay, have your say day consent agenda with this Winterfest item. Did we want, was the church MOU, do we think we'll have that ready for the 13th?
Are you not? You're meeting on the 20th, right?
Just wanted to show that the warning of the closing of the road was timely.
Okay, so I'm hearing a proposal to include the MOU for parking, given that we're anticipating a property closing the 9th. Is there anything else that feels important for the January 13th agenda?
When will we know about the grand opening?
Mid-February, right? That's all.
Say February.
Yeah, the Godspeed's planning it, so I don't have an exact date for you.
Okay, do we want to do like natural disaster? Do we want to do synthesis? 2 proposed agenda items could be synthesis of information or debrief from Have Your Say Day. Do we want to have some time for that discussion in that meeting or just wait to the 20th? Then wait for the 20th.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
I guess my only question on that is if we're asking staff to propose any changes, do we think? Or just wait?
What were those dates you had in your morning?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I would say I pulled up Karen's email about when we need to warn town meeting based on the input.
Well, I guess at the end of Have Your Say Day on the 13th, we could put in an agenda item, suggest changes in the budget as appropriate.
I would just say like, maybe it's just, yeah, like initial debrief from Have Your Say Day. We don't, but if we hear like everyone hated the rec department budget, we clearly need to dig into that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, you have to have your warning done by the 23rd. So that only leaves you, excuse me, it has to be posted between the 23rd and the 2nd of February. And you don't have a meeting until the 3rd of February. So essentially you have January 20th to get it, unless you have another meeting in January.
So we can do the 20th.
Sorry? Yeah, unless you have another meeting in January.
Yeah.
It's just that they've been meeting every week in December, so.
Yeah, we just,
Yes.
we need every day if possible.
Demanding more money.
All right, so I heard general support for maybe a 20-minute debrief after Have Your Say Day. Everyone can give their 4-minute debrief and then
It's on the 13th.
on the 13th, thank you, yes. Any other items we want on that night? Are we doing natural disaster? What is the current status? Handbook.
I think that we can also bring on 20th.
Great, that's, yeah, no problem. So we're waiting.
Kicking that down the road.
When is the last?
That's right.
You could use. Yeah. Put in petitions for special events.
I think it's the 27th of January.
So you don't want to do one on 20. Then we do 27.
I see this one says January 16th is the deadline for funding petitions, but am I wrong? Or is that just an internal deadline?
So 27th is candidate, funding petitions are the 16th. Candidate petitions are.
Okay,
Yeah, I couldn't get it wrong.
sorry, I'm back to 13th. We have thus far on the agenda, have your say day, the consent agenda with the closure, a debrief of have your say day, Wesley Church.
And other business I heard, is that all? Somebody threw out other business. I wrote it down.
I may have said it, I will say editorially, I wondered if like roundtable updates, since I'm now chair and sometimes get emails that I forget to call each one of you individually and say, I got the summary of the CVRPC roundtable that I attended. If having some sort of intentional time on the agenda for like 2-minute updates, we sometimes do it as part of drafting the agenda, but it's just, I don't know what we call it. Other but select board, I recognize that we don't want to warn just a general agenda item for everything, but I would say like 2-minute updates from each person about any pertinent things. I'm seeing nods. Is the board supportive of this?
Could it potentially cover updates from the communities that we're in?
Yeah, love that. Okay.
I'm hearing you say, Ms. Kelman, that you would like an item on every agenda from now on.
Yes, I am in fact proposing this wild and editorial meeting agenda.
Okay.
So yes, before next meeting agenda,
Oh.
I was gonna do, right? Because then if something's really, put it on the next agenda.
It's a new other business.
What do we want? I don't like other business. I think that's sketchy.
Yeah.
Board and board.
Board updates.
Yeah, board and committee updates.
Yeah, boarding committee update sounds good.
Okay, and as a rule, how long? 10 minutes, 2 minutes apiece?
Yes.
You want to change it to board committee and manager updates, since there's.
Yes, if we do board, committee and manager, it's 15, but then I need commitment from everyone. I'm cutting it off after 15. Are we good with that? I'm gonna bring a timer. I know Ian's making a face. He knows.
You good? It's good. Concise.
I mean, most of my updates about the disaster committee have been 15 seconds or less, so I think I can.
I was so ahead of time on this agenda and then we word edited the thing together and here we are. So it happens quickly. All right. That gets us through the 13th. Anything else we need on the 13th? Next meeting agenda for always. Okay, I'm gonna say we hold the 20th and do that on the 13th. Is that all right with the board? Just knowing that the 20th is MLK, we are meeting on the Monday,
Yes.
right?
Are we open that day?
I don't think so. Let's check.
So then our new secretary will cover.
Well, You're gonna be the
Secretaries of multiple organizations, keeping minutes pretty easy.
Ooh, whoa, did you hear that?
Be concise.
You mean when I take 8 pages, it's not
No,
useful?
I'm not an 8-page minutes guy.
Yeah, that's a problem. All right, any other items with regards to next meeting agendas? All right, I took the liberty of printing out the chapter of Vermont state law pertaining to executive session so that we can be very formal with our motions.
Although you talk faster than I can.
I know, but I gave you a copy, right? So I heard you can Google it and then copy. I can pass this around the table, but in allowable use for executive session, first we have to do a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage pertaining to contracts, labor relations, and also personnel. I'm going to propose that we start with an executive session for the evaluation of a public officer or employee and invite the manager and clerk to join the select board. Does someone want to make the motion? I think it's 3, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Have we covered the motion to enter executive session for evaluation of personnel? Made by Roger, seconded by Kenny. I mean this with all due respect, and invite the clerk and manager. All right, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Any abstentions? Right, we will enter executive session.